Let's talk about some ladder stitch. Ladder stitch is not something that you generally see an entire project made out of. It's basically a building block to other stitches. But it's also really important to know how to do it so that you can do those other stitches. For instance, it's frequently the building block of a herringbone stitch. Today, we're going to just learn the very basic ladder stitch. Let's take a look at the beads. This is very simple to do once you get in the rhythm of it. I'm using some cylinder-shaped beads here right now because they stack together really nicely and it will make it very easy to see what's going on. You'll start by picking up 2 beads. Pull them down your thread until you've got about a 4 to 6 inch tail left below them. You just need enough tail to weave back in later. You don't need to go crazy on the tail. Then I'm going to pass through the bottom bead, the one that's closest to me, from the tail end up. Get that tail thread out of the way there. Once I do that, see how those 2 beads just snug up together right next door to each other. So that is our first ladder. Now we need to get to this outside edge here to be able to add more beads. So to do that, to get in position, we're going to pass through the bead on the outside edge. Now we're ready to add another bead. We'll pick up one. Because our thread is coming out the bottom of this bead, we're going to go through that bead on the top edge. So you're basically, I think of it as chasing my thread. And then that snugs right on up. Then to get in position to the outside edge, you're going to need to pass through the bead that you just added and pick up one more bead. This time our thread is coming out the top. With ladder stitch, it's going to alternate between the top and the bottom every time you create a stitch. So here on this time, since your thread is coming out the top, you want to go in on the bottom, chasing that thread. Then you need to get back to the outside edge, so you'll pass through the bead that you just added. And you will keep adding beads until you get the length that you need. One of the things about ladder stitch is that it can be quite loosey-goosey depending on what beads you're working with. In this case, because I am using these cylinder beads, they are sitting fairly nicely and snug up right against each other. But, and let me show you this, if you end up with lots of extra thread showing, and let me kind of show you what I'm talking about here. Here I've got some extra thread showing right here, I've got some extra thread showing right here. You can see where they're kind of a little bit wiggly wonkly. Depending on how many times you need to go back through those beads again, in this case I'm using gigantic beads so I can get my needle and thread through there a whole bunch of times. If you're using a much smaller bead, whether you can get your needle and thread in for as many passes as you need can become an issue. But one way to tighten these up is just to weave back through them. And this time I'm not going to worry about circling or anything. I'm just going to zigzag back and forth through those beads from top to bottom. And as I finish pulling each time, I just give it a little bit of a tug. And now, there we go. Now those beads have a lot less thread showing, they're straighter, and they're sitting like little soldiers. So that's the ladder stitch technique, and you'll be using that for all sorts of different things, including the Ogallala lace bracelet.